When you're thinking, you're actually listening. What they don't tell you, Alan Watts. Alan Watts often spoke about the nature of thought and consciousness in a way that flips conventional understanding on its head. The idea that when you're thinking, you're actually listening challenges the notion that thoughts originate solely from the self. Instead, Watts suggests that thoughts arise much like sounds, appearing in consciousness rather than being actively created by an individual thinker. The idea that thought is a process, not a creator, aligns deeply with both Eastern philosophy and modern understandings of consciousness. Alan Watts, Walter Russell, and even biblical wisdom touch on this in different ways. Thought is a process, not a creator. Thought emerges, it's not manufactured. We often assume that we generate thoughts, but in reality, thoughts arise spontaneously. Just as the heart beats and the lungs breathe, the mind thinks, not because we force it to, but because that's its nature. This means we are more like receivers of thought rather than creators. The mind as a radio receiver. Watts frequently compared the mind to a radio, picking up signals from a greater field of consciousness. Walter Russell also spoke of universal mind, a cosmic intelligence that we tap into rather than generate ourselves. If thought is a process, then deep insights, inspirations, and even worries are merely movements within the field of awareness, not something we own or control. Ego and the illusion of ownership. The ego wants to claim ownership of thought. I am thinking this, or I came up with that. But if thoughts arise on their own, then the idea of a separate self controlling them is an illusion. This is why in meditation and mindfulness, the goal is often to observe thoughts rather than identify with them. Biblical and spiritual alignment. In the Bible, there are verses suggesting that wisdom comes through man rather than from man. Proverbs 3 verses 5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. This implies that understanding is not created by the self, but received from a greater source. Jesus also said, "It is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you." Matthew 10 verse 20. How this connects to the path of the unshaken. If thought is a process and not a creator, then being unshaken means not being controlled by the movement of thoughts. Detachment from thought as mine allows for a deeper connection to wisdom beyond the self. Instead of resisting or clinging to thoughts, the strong and independent man simply observes, allowing the process to unfold without being swept away. This ties into resilience, spiritual awareness, and self-reliance, letting thought move through rather than define who you are. The illusion of the separate self. The idea that the self is an illusion is central to many philosophical, spiritual, and even scientific discussions. Alan Watts, Walter Russell, and biblical teachings all point toward a deeper truth. The self, as we commonly perceive it, is not an isolated, independent entity, but rather an expression of something much greater. 1. The ego as a construct. The self we identify with, our name, memories, roles, and personality, is just a mental construct. Alan Watts compared the ego to a fictional character that we mistake for our true nature. This illusion arises because we mistake our thoughts and experiences for our actual identity. Walter Russell spoke of man as an extension of universal mind, not a separate being, but an individualized expression of the whole. 2. Thought reinforces the illusion. If thought is a process and not a creator, then the idea of an independent I is simply a recurring thought pattern. The mind creates the illusion of a separate self through constant internal dialogue. I am this, I need that, I must become better. But what happens if we observe these thoughts rather than identifying with them? The illusion begins to dissolve, revealing a deeper awareness beneath it. 3. The self is part of a greater whole. Just as a wave is not separate from the ocean, we are not separate from the greater flow of existence. In John 17 verse 21, Jesus says, "That they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me, and I in you." This points to a deeper unity beyond individual identity. In the same way, Walter Russell emphasized that man's true nature is divine, not separate from the Creator, but an extension of it. 4. Freedom from the illusion. Realizing that the separate self is an illusion is the key to true resilience. If you are not a limited, separate being, but a manifestation of something infinite, what is there to fear? Challenges, suffering, and even death lose their grip when you see yourself not as an isolated fragment, but as part of the eternal flow of life. How this connects to the path of the unshaken. The unshaken man is not attached to the illusion of self, but rooted in a deeper reality. He does not seek validation or approval because he knows the self is an illusion. He does not fear change or loss because he sees himself as part of something greater. He stands alone, yet he is never truly alone, because he is connected to the whole. The influence of external and internal forces. The way we think, feel, and act is shaped by both external influences, society, culture, environment, and internal forces, subconscious beliefs, emotions, spiritual intuition. Understanding these forces is key to breaking free from conditioned patterns and walking the path of the unshaken. 1. External forces, the world's programming. From birth, we are conditioned by society, education, media, and culture to see the world in a certain way. Alan Watts often spoke about how society imposes an identity upon us, making us believe we are separate, lacking, or in need of external validation. Walter Russell taught that civilization operates on materialistic illusions, leading people away from divine awareness. Biblical perspective, Romans 12 verse 2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. To be unshaken, one must become aware of this programming and step outside of it. 2. Internal forces, the subconscious and the higher self. Beneath conscious awareness, past experiences, traumas, and ingrained beliefs shape our reactions and decisions. Many people believe they are acting freely, but they are simply following patterns set in motion long ago. Walter Russell spoke of man's divine intuition, the voice of universal mind within, which can only be accessed by stilling the noise of external and internal conditioning. Biblical alignment. The kingdom of God is within you. Luke 17 verse 21. The true self is not the conditioned ego but the observer, the awareness beyond thoughts and emotions. 3. Breaking free, mastering both forces. The man who walks alone must learn to see through external programming while also mastering his internal world. This requires awareness, recognizing which thoughts and beliefs are truly yours versus those implanted by society. Detachment, observing emotions and reactions without being controlled by them. Connection to source, aligning with divine wisdom rather than human conditioning. How this connects to the path of the unshaken. The unshaken man is not a puppet of the world's systems or his own subconscious conditioning. He chooses his path consciously, guided by divine wisdom rather than societal pressure. He is independent in mind and spirit, able to walk alone without fear, because he stands on truth rather than illusion. Stillness and true awareness. In a world driven by constant motion, both external and mental, true power lies in stillness. The ability to silence the mind and rest in pure awareness is the foundation of clarity, strength, and unshakable presence. Stillness is not passivity. It is the gateway to higher consciousness, wisdom, and mastery over the self. 1. The power of stillness. Society glorifies action, noise, and busyness, but true understanding comes from stillness. Alan Watts spoke about how people mistake movement for progress, when in reality, stillness allows us to connect with the deeper flow of existence. Walter Russell taught that the universal mind speaks in silence, and only through stillness can one align with divine wisdom. Biblical connection. Psalm 46 verse 10. Be still, and know that I am God. The unshaken man does not react impulsively. He pauses, observes, and moves with deliberate awareness. 2. The observer versus the thinker. Thoughts are constantly arising, like waves on the ocean. Most people identify with their thoughts, believing they are the thinker, but in reality, they are the observer behind the thoughts. In stillness, we become aware that thoughts are not who we are. They are simply movements in consciousness. Key realization. When you stop engaging with thoughts, they lose their power over you. 3. The void as the gateway to power. Many fear stillness because it feels like emptiness, but in truth, the void is where creation begins. Walter Russell described the universe as a rhythmic exchange between motion and rest. Just as exhalation follows inhalation, Wisdom follows stillness. Biblical connection. Elijah found God not in the fire, wind, or earthquake, but in the still small voice. 1 Kings 19 verse 12. True awareness comes not from thinking, but from listening to the silence beneath thought. 4. The unshaken man, rooted in awareness. The man who walks alone does not seek answers in external chaos. He finds them in internal stillness. He is not disturbed by the storms of life because he operates from a place of deep knowing, not mental noise. He does not react emotionally but responds with presence and clarity. Stillness is his weapon, his anchor, and his source of power. How this connects to the path of the unshaken. Stillness is the core principle of resilience. Only in stillness can one see the truth beyond illusion. Awareness leads to mastery. When you no longer identify with thoughts and emotions, they lose control over you. The unshaken man moves with purpose, speaks with intention, and remains undisturbed by external forces. What they don't tell you. Most people live under the illusion that they are their thoughts, that the mind is their personal creator, and that true power comes from external achievements. What they don't tell you is that real mastery is found in detachment, stillness, and the recognition of a deeper reality beyond the self. 1. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer. Society tells you that thinking equals intelligence, but few realize that most thoughts are conditioned responses, not original insights. Alan Watts revealed that thoughts arise on their own, much like the wind blows or the heart beats. Walter Russell taught that the divine mind is the true source of wisdom, and personal thinking often distorts it. What they don't tell you. Your greatest strength comes not from controlling thoughts, but from realizing they do not define you. 2. The separate self is an illusion. You are more than you think. The world conditions you to believe you are a separate individual fighting for survival. But what they don't tell you is that your true nature is connected to something infinite. Call it God, the universal mind, or higher consciousness. Biblical truth. The kingdom of God is within you. Luke 17 verse 21. Walter Russell saw man not as a separate being, but as an extension of divine intelligence, a co-creator rather than a limited self. The unshaken man walks with power because he knows he is not a fragment. He is the whole expressing itself in human form. 3. External forces shape you more than you realize until you break free. People think they are in control of their decisions, but most actions are reactions to conditioning. The media, society, and even family shape beliefs, fears, and desires, often without awareness. What they don't tell you. The path of true freedom begins when you question everything you've been taught. The unshaken man walks alone not because he rejects the world, but because he sees through it and chooses his own way. 4. True power lies in stillness, not in struggle. The world glorifies hustle, action, and struggle, but real strength comes from stillness. What they don't tell you. The mind's noise is an illusion. When you step beyond it, you access clarity, wisdom, and unshakable presence. Walter Russell spoke of the universal heartbeat, where true power is found in rest as much as in motion. Biblical truth. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46 verse 10. The unshaken man moves deliberately, speaks with purpose, and acts from awareness, not from impulse. How this connects to the path of the unshaken. What they don't tell you is that you don't need to seek power. You already have it, once you remove illusions. The path is not about adding more knowledge, success, or external validation. It is about unlearning, letting go, and realizing your true nature. The unshaken man is free not because he has conquered the world, but because he has mastered himself. How do you see this fitting with your work on the path of the unshaken? It seems like this concept aligns well with resilience and detachment from the illusions of control.